With grief-stricken hearts, announce tragic news, brutal murder, dearly loved, greatly admired, hand cause of God, Enoch Olinga, by unknown gunman, courtyard, his Kampala home. His wife Elizabeth and 3 children, Badi, Lenny, and Tahira, had also fallen innocent victims this cruel act. His radiant spirit, his unwavering faith, his all-embracing love, his leonine audacity in the teaching field, his titles, Knight of Baha'u'llah, Father of Victories conferred by the beloved guardian, all combine to distinguish him as preeminent member his race in annals of the faith on the African continent, the Universal House of Justice.
The death of my family was devastating to us. Words could never describe the effect the loss of our dear ones had to our family. It brought to, for me, it brought to the surface the reality that our life on this earth is a fleeting moment, and how important it is to do what we are here to do. And of course, that is to spiritualize our lives, to teach the faith, because in reality, nothing else really matters in the end. It's who we are, what we've done in this world, and that's all we'll be taking with us. And the death of my father, my young brothers and mother really brought that to the surface for me and for my siblings. And I know that from the other world, he is looking out for us and praying for us and the grandchildren and for the friends. And even though he's not here, his spirit is with us. And he will always be missed tremendously.
The news of Enoch Olinga and members of his family's tragic death came as such an unexpected shock to the Baha'i World Center, and especially to the Universal House of Justice members. You know, the Universal House of Justice is the highest administrative institution of the Baha'i faith, where the Baha'is all over the world look for their love and guidance. So we were just in shock. Accompanying this tragedy a week before was the razing of the Bab's home in Shiraz. The Bab, of course, being the prophet who announced the coming of Baha'u'llah. So we have the twin prophets of the Bab and Baha'u'llah in the Baha'i faith. His sacred home had been totally destroyed by what was also going on at that time, the Islamic Revolution, where the Baha'is were being picked up, imprisoned, martyred, tortured. Ali Natchivani, a member of the Universal House of Justice, said, at that time, the Baha'i World Center was a community in mourning.
It made me very sad when we heard about the death of Mr. Olinga. But at the same time, you know, he died in very tragic and difficult circumstances, but it really seemed to me to be reflective of his life as well, that he had given to the faith completely. He was devoted and was a tireless teacher of the faith, and in that same way he steadfastly was at his post teaching, carrying out the instructions and the directives of the House of Justice. And you know, like many other Baha'is and many of the other martyrs, he ultimately gave his life. It reminds me of one of the other very early African believers, Eduardo Vieira, who was considered the first African martyr. He was from Guinea-Bissau. And it's amazing that we're still so close to that time period, that we probably really, I think, don't fully appreciate the legacy that they have left for us in blazing the trail and opening up those countries to the faith, which now we see so many burgeoning Baha'i communities today.
His death came unexpectedly and tragically and pointlessly. It was a great shock to everyone in the Baha'i community around the world, I'm sure. I think to me it pointed up the fact that of the great need for the revelation of Baha'u'llah to eradicate the things that lead to such acts, because they don't stand alone and by themselves, but as something that comes from a system that is definitely defective. We can grieve for his passing, and yet we know his life was spent in serving the cause he loved, and that he is in a better place. We have to stay and work here on this earthly plane.
I think I never felt more sad than at the death of Enoch Olinga. Just to see his face in my mind now gives me strength and love. He was love personified. He gave us, he wrote out in his own handwriting a beautiful prayer that he said Abdu'l-Baha it was a prayer of Abdu'l-Baha that had been given to him when he was in the Holy Land. And it was one that he always asked his wife to say for him when he was traveling in Africa. And all I remember of it now is that he said he would go over mountains and so forth to teach the faith, and that he asked God to give him tests. But please, O God, in the hour of test, give me strength. And when he died, when we knew that his life had come to such a tragic end, that prayer came to my mind that, oh God, you were with him in the hour of test, I know.
I don't think, personally, I can forget Olinga. I don't think, no. Because the love is beyond I can't even give explanation about how he loved me, everybody. Not to me alone, but whoever Olinga embraced, he would not feel it. I don't know. Unless that person, I've never been to World Center, but I think Mr. Olinga became my World Center, sorry.
Enoch Olinga's murder was recited to me by telephone on a telegram. I succumbed to physical, emotional grief, but went out later in the streets of the Caribbean island where I was living, amongst the people of color there. I'm remembering how Mr. Olinga had been one person in Uganda and had discovered Baha'u'llah's revelation, and how empowered and transformed and how huge his spirit had become to encompass the peoples of the world and beyond. I'm walking down the sidewalk, and every face of color that was passing me, I'm looking and saying, are you Enoch Olinga? I'm thinking, every single person has to be able to hear about the revelation of Baha'u'llah. We don't know what God knows about what they have to offer. God knew about Enoch Olinga and somehow guided him to the path. And I'm looking to think, all these people, I have to tell them, is this one another Enoch Olinga? Are you Enoch Olinga? Are you Enoch Olinga? That stays with me today. Thank you, God, because the desire to teach, the desire to be open to the spirit of teaching so that I can find or be in the company of one whose soul, whose spirit, whose history, whose energy, whose life could become as Enoch Olinga.
One of the last holidays we spent with Papa Olinga and Mama Elizabeth was in Kampala home. And one day he shared with us one of the mystical dream of his, which he had a night before. He called us in the sitting room and he told us that he dreamed he ascended to the next world. And he was so surprised seeing Bach, Einstein, and Beethoven. They were so busy. They were working so hard and composing music. So he asked them, "What are you doing?" They said, "The same thing we have been doing in the earth." He was surprised. And he said, "But I thought when we come to the next world, we are going to rest, and there is no more work." Beethoven laughed and said, "In fact, you need to work harder in the next world, and there is no rest." And then Papa Olinga asked, "But why? Why is it like that?" He said, "Because we are supposed to inspire the people on the earth, so be ready to work harder." Papa Olinga was so beautifully telling us, bringing to our attention, and he said, "Do you understand what does that mean?" We looked, and several times he repeated, and he said, "You know, I thought that I'm going to be resting. You know, children, I'm very tired. I have been traveling, I have been teaching the faith. I am tired, and I thought I will go and rest." And then he broke to laughter and he said, "It seems there is no rest here, and we need to." And then he suddenly said, changed his voice, and he said, "Well, if that is the wish of Baha'u'llah, then let's work hard. Pray for me."
Ah.